Ozymandias by Percy B. Shelley. The poem starts with the poet talking about his experience of meeting somebody, and the person that he met is a traveler. This traveler comes from an antique land, so a land full of memories and history, of heritage. Who said, the poet starts talking, but then there are the words of this traveler that describe something that he really saw. Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip, and sneer of cold command, tell that his sculpture well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear: My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. The traveler describes the situation in which he was in the desert and saw the broken fragments, the wreck of a statue. What remains are just two legs of stone that are without a trunk, and they are standing. On the contrary, lying on the sand, half sunk, half hidden, is another part of the statue. This is the visage that is broken, is fragmented, is shattered. But still, on the visage, it was possible to recognize some elements of the expression, the facial features, characterized by frown and wrinkled lips. So, these elements, frown, wrinkled lips, and sneer of cold command, give the idea of an arrogant being that was depicted, and it is, of course, Ozymandias. Ozymandias is Greek name of Ramses II, that was the pharaoh of Egypt. What is interesting that all these elements that were perfectly depicted in the face that was lying on the sand tell that he sculptures well those passions read. So what we can say that there was the mastery of the sculpture that was able to perfectly represent the emotion and the feelings characterizing Ramses II, that was the typical arrogance of power and indifference to the destiny of the other human beings around him. So, which yet survive? What survives is what remains, what can be seen through the face, the expression of the statue, of the visage of the statue. And these feelings, these emotions, these passions are stamped on what is lifeless, because a statue is made up of marble or stone, or something that is without any life in itself. What is stamped on this lifeless thing is both something that describes and tells part of the story of Ramses II, but also it talks about the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. So what we can see, what the traveler could see really, is both the proficiency, the hand that mocked them, the proficiency of the sculpture that mocked, in the sense of imitated, those passions on the stone, and the heart that fed, but also the feelings of the heart of Ramses II that were feeding those emotions and those passions. Apart from this, there is a new element that is particularly interesting, that on the pedestal there are words that appear, and the words are: My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. And that's quite ambiguous. When it was made, the inscription had the aim of making other powerful people of the earth jealous, envious of the immense power of Ramses II, of Ozymandias. That's why he said, look at my works, look at what I have done, you powerful people of the earth, and despair because you will never be as powerful as I am. But then there is another sentence, nothing besides remain, and this is something that contrasts with look on my works, but also makes the interpretation of this sentence possible in a completely different sense. That is, there is what we can call situational irony. Irony due to the fact that when it is read so many centuries later, the despair is due not to the power of Ramses II, but to the fact that that power is meaningless, since it has turned into fragments. This power has completely disappeared. Nothing besides remains. What is left even of the statue, and not only of the empire that doesn't exist any longer, round the decay of that colossal wreck. So, all around the remains of the statue, that now is reduced to a colossal wreck, there is something that, on the contrary, is boundless and bare. Pay attention to the alliteration here. Boundless means infinite, and bare means that it is what they are, without anything added. What is there that is infinite and bare? The lone and level sense that stretch far away, giving the idea of the infinite of nature. But since we are talking about sense, sense also gives the idea of time. So what survives, and what is more powerful than Ramses II, that was so arrogant, is the fact that there is something more powerful than he was, and that's time, perfectly represented in this infinite landscape of the desert, made up of lone and level sands that are everywhere and surround the statue. It's, of course, this sonnet is criticism of power and of the futility of arrogance and power when compared to infinite of time. At the same time, this is a sonnet, but it's also broken and fragmented. For example, look here. The sentences are broken. They continue on the next line. So what you can really see, even in the structure of the poem, the idea of the powerlessness of the human beings is represented, but at the same time there is something that remains together with time and that can at least hope to defeat time in part, is the statue. Because even if the statue too is subject to the corroding effects of time, still it tells something. Art, in the form of the hands of the sculpture, is still there as a kind of memento mori here.